Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Mancuso, ready to do some chemistry. So first of all, I've been having some difficulty. I have to go into iMovie to edit it right. It's not uploading properly, but I will be loading all of these to YouTube. So if you just search Nancy Mancuso and go into playlist chemistry review, you'll be able to see the videos. So tonight's exam. So this is practice exam 5, which is the June 2016 exam. All right, so if you don't have it yet, go print out the June 2016 exam. If you do a Google search and you type in Regents Chemistry, one of the sites that comes up lets you see all the exams. So just choose the June 2016 exam. That's what I'm going to go over today. And if you haven't gotten it yet, on my Instagram, I have posted which lives I'm doing each night, which exams I'm going to go over live each night. So that you can be prepared. If you didn't print out this exam in advance, I would just go to the website and follow along with me. So let's get started. Which statement describes the charge of an electron and the charge of a proton? So an electron is negative, a proton's positive. So no, electron, no. So there it is. Number 2, which subatomic particles are found in the nucleus of an atom of beryllium? So the nucleus is where the protons and the neutrons are, and the electrons are outside in orbitals. So protons and neutrons are in the nucleus. All right, the elements in period 4 on the periodic table are arranged in order of. So as you go across period 4, it goes up by 1 atomic number each time. So here's our periods, and as you go across, 19, 20, 21, 22. All right, which phrase describes 2 forms of solid carbon? So diamond is made of carbon and graphite is made of carbon. But we know diamond and graphite are really different. So they're different because they have a different structure. So I want to cross those off right away. So different structure. And if they have a different structure, they're not going to have the same properties. They're going to have different properties. That's why diamond and graphite behave so differently. Which element has 6 valence electrons in each of its atoms in the ground state? So valence is the last number. So we want to look for the one that ends in 6. So we'll just go through each of these choices. So SE, there it is. SE ends in 6. AS ended in 5. KR ended in 8. And GA ends in 3. So the valence is the outer number of electrons. The number of outer electrons. All right, what is the chemical name for H2SO3? So when it starts with an H, I know it's an acid. Actually, all of these answer choices say acid. So I'm going to go to Table K. Table K lists a lot of examples. So if it doesn't list this exact one, I'll at least be able to figure out how to name it. Oh, and it did. It named the exact one. So H2SO3, sulfurous acid. Which substance is most soluble in water? So I want to go to table F because that's the one that tells me if it's soluble or not. And I'm guessing that 3 of these are going to be soluble and 3 of these are going to be insoluble and 1 is going to be soluble. So NH4 is always soluble, so this one's going to be soluble, but I'll look up the other ones just to show you. Here is OH, it's insoluble, and copper is not on the exceptions list, so this is insoluble, so it can't be the answer. AgSO4, SO4 normally soluble, except for when you put it with Ag, it's insoluble, so not that one. And then CaCO3. So here's CO3, insoluble. Calcium is not an exception. So 3 of them were insoluble, 1 was soluble. All right, which type of bonding is present in a sample of an element that's malleable? If it's malleable, it's a metal. So if I have a metal, I have metallic bonding. And I don't have to have any other elements. I could have just copper. Copper is metallic bonding. You just have a lot of copper atoms all together. They have a mobile sea of electrons when you have something that's metallically bonded too. Which atom has the greatest attraction for electrons? So attraction for electrons is electronegativity. So I can just look up which one of these has the highest electronegativity. So I go to table S, the table after the periodic table, and hydrogen is 2.2, oxygen is 3.4. So I already know hydrogen's not my answer. Silicon is 1.9 and sulfur is 2.6. So the highest of those was oxygen, which makes sense because it's the furthest over to the right. Which type of reaction involves the transfer of electrons? So electrons are transferred not in alpha decay. Double replacement, the charges stay exactly the same, so not there. Neutralization is between an acid and a base. Here's my answer. Oxidation is losing electrons. Reduction is gaining electrons, so they're transferred from what is oxidized to what is reduced. All right, a 10-gram sample of nitrogen is at STP. Which property will increase when the sample is cooled to 72? So I have nitrogen, and nitrogen is a gas, and it's at 273, that's standard temperature. If I cool it down to 72, the mass will stay exactly the same. The volume would decrease. So when you make it cold, you make the particles get closer to each other. So the volume would go down. That means the density would go up. You would have more particles per area. So it says which property is going to increase. It's going to become more dense when it's cold. And then the temperature is decreasing, so not temperature. All right, which element is a gas at STP? So I could look up the boiling point and see which one has already passed the boiling point at 273, but it's actually a little bit easier than that. If you go to the periodic table, all of the noble gases are gases. So xenon is a gas, so xenon would be my answer. All right, again, we're doing the June 2016 exam if you just joined us. All right, a 5-gram sample of iron is to be placed in 100 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. What changes will result in the fastest reaction rate? So what's going to give me a really good reaction? If I'm mixing iron with hydrochloric acid, I want to make this 5 grams be like powdered. So I want to increase the surface area. Absolutely. And then increasing the concentration of HCl. Yes, I want to increase and increase. The other choices, increase and decrease. Decrease. Yeah, so the one that makes the most sense is to increase the surface area and increase the concentration. All right, which process is used to separate a mixture of ethanol and water? So ethanol is an alcohol and it's a liquid. So if you have a liquid and a liquid, you want to separate them based on their boiling points, which is distillation. A sample of hydrogen gas will behave most like an ideal gas. So when it is ideal, it spreads out. So gases don't like to be close to each other. They like to spread out. So low pressure. Do not put much pressure on them. Let the pressure be low so they can spread. Oh, low temperatures, cold. That'll make them get close together. So one can't be the answer. Low pressure, high temperature. There we go. That's a good answer. The collision theory states that a reaction is most likely to occur when the reactant particles collide with the proper. All right, literally third night in a row. Here's my high five. It's got to be at just the right orientation and just the right energy. So the goal of doing so many of these exams with you guys is to help you realize they're asking the same types of questions over and over again. And I want you to be confident that you can answer each and every one of them correctly. All right, at STP, which sample contains the same number of molecules as 3 liters of this gas? So if I have 3 liters and I want to have the same number of molecules, I just go find the one that's 3 liters. So there we go. The addition of a catalyst to a chemical reaction provides an alternate pathway. And again, I drew this last night. I'm going to draw it again. If this is my reaction, here's a nice endothermic reaction. That's my normal pathway. If I add a catalyst, I start at the same place, but I don't have to add as much activation energy. My activation energy is going to decrease. So, decreases the activation energy, making my reaction happen faster. All right, a sample of water is boiling as heat is added at a constant rate. Which statement describes the potential energy and the kinetic energy of the water molecules in this sample? So if I'm boiling, I'm at a plateau. Here's the liquid, here's the gas, here's my boiling. So what happens right here? My kinetic energy is staying exactly the same, but I'm still adding heat, so the potential is still going up. So I want the potential energies increasing and the kinetic energies remaining the same. So even though I'm still heating a pot of boiling water, it's staying at the same temperature. So the potential is going up, but the kinetic energy stays the same. It stays at 100. All right, entropy, that's the amount of disorder in a system. So remember, a gas or any free elements are going to have the most disorder, and the least entropy would be compounds and solids because they're the most organized. Which element has atoms that combine with each other to form rings, chains, and networks? That's carbon. Organic molecules are able to form so many because carbon has 4 valence electrons, so it can form 4 bonds. What's the number of electrons shared in the multiple carbon-carbon bond in one molecule of pentyne? So pentyne, if you're not sure, go to table Q and look up the hydrocarbons. So these are our kinds of hydrocarbons, and yne is right here. It tells me it has a triple bond. So if I have a triple bond, I'm sharing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 electrons. Sometimes they ask you how many pairs, so it would be 3 pairs. Sometimes it just asks you the number of electrons. This is 6 total electrons. I like to do the dumbbells on each one because then it just reminds you that every bond has 2 electrons being shared. All right, butanol, butanone, and diethyl ether have different properties because the molecules of each one differ in. All right, number of carbons. Well, this has 4 carbons. This has 4 carbons, so I already got to cross that out. Number of oxygen. So this is going to have, butanol is an aldehyde. I could just go over here. And actually, as soon as I go over here, the difference between these, so an aldehyde has this functional group. What was the next one? Ketone is going to have this functional group. And an ether has this functional group. And functional group is one of the choices, so that's why they're different. They each have a different functional group. All right, what occurs when a magnesium atom becomes a magnesium ion? So magnesium is a metal. That means it's a left side loser. So it's Mg and it's becoming Mg plus 2. So Mg becomes Mg plus 2. So that's because it loses. It has 2 valence electrons. It's going to lose both of them. So electrons are lost, and my oxidation number goes up. It goes from a 0 to a plus 2. Energy is required to produce a chemical change during. So which one of these requires energy? Electrolysis. That is the redox electrolytic cell that requires a battery. The rest of them are physical changes. They're not chemical changes. 26, the reaction of an Arrhenius acid with a base. So if I have an acid and a base, you always get water and you always get an ionic salt. So the H comes from the acid, the OH comes from the base, and then the metal from the base and the non-metal from the acid come together to make a salt. or an ionic compound. All right, one acid-base theory defines an acid as, well, acids pretty much just have one definition. Acids are H plus donors or proton donors, so that's what they are. Which phrase describes the decay modes and half-lives of K37 and K42? So I got to go to table N and find these radioisotopes. So K37 does positron, and it takes 1.23 seconds for half of it to decay. And K42 does beta, and it takes 12.5 hours. So they had different decay modes and different half-lives. Which particle has a mass that's equal to the mass of a proton? So a proton and a neutron both have a mass of 1. If you're not sure, you can always go to table O. So a proton has a mass of 1. And then you look here. So here's the proton with the mass of 1. And alpha has a mass of 4. The mass is always the top number. A beta has a mass of 0. And a positron has a mass of 0. So a neutron has a mass of 1, the same as a proton. All right, what change occurs during a fission reaction? So fission is when something really big like uranium splits into different nuclei. And so what happens is it makes a ton of energy. It loses a little bit of matter, but it's good for like nuclear power plants because it produces so much energy. These other things you'll notice, they have nothing to do with nuclear chemistry, so they're pretty easy cross-offs. Making energy is really important in nuclear reactions.